There's starting to be rising concern that the Josh Giddey and Chicago Bulls contract negotiations could very well go to the October deadline. We're talking about a little bit about what that October deadline is and why some of the narrative things around why people are starting to say that. We're also going to talk about Modest Buzelis saying that he wants to be the best player ever. No, that he believes he could be the best player ever. And then we're going to talk about an interesting trade scenario that would send Patrick Williams to the Milwaukee Bucks for Kyle Kuzma. We'll talk about all that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content today, y'all. I want to start off talking about the Josh Giddey, Chicago Bulls contract negotiations, which, a lot of people are talking more and more about potentially going further and further on. Even some talk recently about it may be lasting to the October 1st deadline, where that's where the players have to decide if they're going to take the qualifying offer or not. But part of the reason why this is starting to be talked about a little bit more is that, of course, the Bulls had their summer league games over the weekend. Of course, we hosted watch parties for those. We're going to host another watch party tonight, so make sure y'all are tuned in. But of course, because of that, during that time, players like Kobe White, Julian Phillips, Patrick Williams, Kevin Huerter, Zach Collins, Modest Buzelis in the game that he did not play, these guys were sidelined watching the Bulls Summer League team play. One of the players that was not there was Josh Giddey, despite him being in Vegas, and we know he was in Vegas because of his social media and him posting on Instagram that he was in Vegas. Here's the thing, right? And I always like to separate what's narrative, or what I believe personally is narrative, versus actual reporting and those type of things. That feels like a very big narrative thing. Now, make no mistake about it. Like Josh Giddey, not being out there with his teammates is going to raise some eyebrows. But I think overall, we know that Josh Giddey is an amazing teammate. Look at his relationship with his former OKC teammates. Look at the way that even in some of the interviews that happened in this team post-trade with Zach LaVine, like him interviewing Trey Jones and the relationship that we have there, I don't have any doubt that he has a good relationship with his teammates. And I don't think he would use that as a negotiation ploy. It is what it is, whatever it is there. Now, the chances that Josh Giddey legitimately, or any of these restricted free agents out there, because keep in mind, all the major restricted free agents have not signed yet, that go to the October 1st deadline. That is when a player can accept the qualifying offer. But let's be clear, it can go beyond that. And now both teams could decide to agree to push it out longer than that. But there is, if teams are going to actually reach a new contract, they have even further than that to be able to do that. So, it's that part when it comes down to it. For example, a player cannot be extended past March 1st, right? So if the deadline passes without the offer being accepted or withdrawn, the player remains a restricted free agent, and the team retains rights to match any offer sheet the player receives from another team. So there's a lot of leeway here. And, it's been talked, and this one did come from the Chicago Sun-Times saying this: even if the Bulls front office deems Giddey worthy of $150 million restricted free agency, allows the organization to play hardball. Beginning talks with $100 million over 5 years is the most logical way forward, but logic isn't always comforting, especially from the player's point of view. So the Bulls have leverage here. We all knew that. We knew that the Bulls are going to have leverage. Now, a lot of people are, me myself included, are surprised that the Bulls are actually using that leverage, because that's just not what they've done in negotiations in the past. And so the fact that this has gone on as long as it is surprising. We're in mid-July now. It may be to the end of July to where this thing is resolved and a resolution is found. Now, maybe not. Maybe they find a resolution sooner rather than later. They figure it out. All things are good and fine and dandy, and maybe that ends up being the case. But if not, then you have a little bit of a problem there, right? So, we'll end up seeing what happens. I'm not going to be too overly worried about it. I know that a lot of Bulls fans are starting to be, and I understand why they would be. Like, at this point, it's like, what's happening here? Is it the money? Is it the years? Is it both? Is it that, the Bulls are finally playing hardball with Josh Giddey of all players? Like, What is it? Is it that maybe, as much as we look negatively on the organization, or Josh Giddey and his agent maybe asking for even more than what we've heard? Like, I'm just throwing all scenarios out there at this point. Like, I'm not saying anything that I've heard or read or anything like that. But ultimately, it's restricted free agency. The chances that Josh Giddey return back to the Bulls, especially with the Bulls wanting to keep him, are more likely than anything. AK, of course, over Summer League, was interviewed. He said that he wants Kobe and Josh Giddey to be here both long-term, that they have a long future in Chicago. And what do you expect him to say? He's not going to get on the Summer League interview and say, yeah, you know what? We want to keep Josh Giddey at $25 million. That's where we feel if it's not going to be that, he may not be a Bull. No, he's not going to say that, right? So everything is a negotiation tactic. Everything is, at this point, plays into that. We just got to see how it's going to shake out for this team overall. But I'm not too worried about it. Should I be more worried about it? Maybe I should. But right now, as it stands, I'm not more worried about it. The Bulls and Josh Giddey are going to come to a contract negotiation, but there is a legitimate question on how much now has these negotiations possibly affected that relationship a little bit. And that may be the thing that you have to worry about there, right? Because keep in mind, you got him signed into a contract now. That doesn't keep him signed into a contract later. And so anything that happens now in negotiations, best believe you're going to pay for one way or another, whether it's the player or the team paying for it once something new happens and a new contract needs to be forward. So that's also a thing to look out for here, is that aspect of things. Because if the Bulls play hardball now, and let's say Josh Giddey does end up signing a shorter 3-year contract, when those 3 years go by fast, if Josh Giddey plays great over those 3 years, either you're going to be paying for those previous negotiations, or in the sense of they're going to be aiming for more money, way more money, which you could have had another 2 years of more cost control money, or you may be paying in that and putting more pressure on it from another team. So that's just the things you have to look at and worry about when you're playing hardball in negotiations. But then again, we don't even know if that's the case. K.C. Johnson came out and said that in his conversations internally with the Bulls, the $30 million number never came up. It's never been something that he's heard. So, I don't know. And if that's not, that actually brings more questions on, well, if Josh Giddey isn't actually looking for $30 million, what's the sticking point? Is it even lower than that the Bulls are willing to go, right? So, but all of it is woulda, coulda, shoulda. Hopefully we get a deal announced here within the next few days. Let's just get this done and over with. I definitely hope that it's over with before the October deadline, because let's just get this done. But I do ultimately think, just to kind of put a bow on this, is that once one of these restricted free agents sign their new deal, you're going to see probably the other two sign within a week of that. And that's probably what I say. So Kyle Kuzma, Quentin Grimes, Josh Giddey, whichever one ends up signing or being signed and traded or whatever it is, once one of those deals goes down first, I think you're going to see the other two dominoes fall pretty quickly thereafter, at least in my opinion. But you guys can let me know how you feel about that down below. Let's move into the next topic for today. Miles Buzelis was interviewed on CHSN in regards to, some things. And he talked about, the Summer League. He also talked about his mindset, his mentality. He said this: I don't know. I think I can be the best. That's just how I think. I always believe. I always think I can be the best, so I never put a limit on anything for me. That's just how I was raised. I think I could be the best player ever. That's just how I think. If you don't think like that, this is not the sport for you. And of course, all the headlines that you guys are going to see is Miles Buzelis thinks he can be the best ever, right? Hell, I'm going to even put that on one of my thumbnails. There you go on that one. But one thing that I always say to this, and I say this over on Bear Central a lot, I say this a lot. One thing that I like to do is to be able to hold players accountable to what they say about themselves, right? And that doesn't mean I'm going to hold Miles Buzelis accountable to say, well, you wanted to be the best player ever. You're not the best player ever. But as far as the work that's willing to put in, right? The refinement of your game year after year. If you want to be the best and you think you can be the best player ever, that would mean that you are willing to put in the work. And that's one thing that nobody's really doubted. We haven't heard anything negative about. Miles Buzelis has been in the Advocate Center. He's been working out all year long with the Chicago trainers, those type of things. And that's great to see. And that's what you want. You want a player that is going to attack the in-between the seasons thing with as much aggressiveness as they do during the season. A lot of development is done in the offseason. And that's something that people don't really talk a lot about. We like to think that, of course, it's all done in the season. The Bulls, most NBA teams have a truncated, it's like 2 weeks of training camp. 2 weeks of training camp. and you're not really going to do a lot of development in there. You need to be able and willing to put in the work in the offseason on your own. And that is one thing that Modest Buzelis is doing. We've talked a lot here over the summer about the importance of Modest taking a step, right? And I'm not even talking about some crazy astronomical leap. No, I'm not talking about that. That can come in year 3, that can come in year 4, but taking a step. Now, some of that is going to be responsibility. Some of that's going to be Modest Buzelis in what he's asked to do and what the coaching staff trusts him to do a little bit more than what he's done in prior years. Well, in this last year's rookie year, which that's already going to see an uptick statistically, hopefully, if you do that, right? But in Modest, the preparation, like him transforming his body. When you look at who Modest was and how skinny he was as a rookie when we drafted him, so now the first game of Summer League heading into his second year, you see somebody who has put in the work, who's taking the dietary part of the game seriously, that is taking the weight training part of the game seriously. And the Bulls need somebody with that type of mentality. When the Bulls drafted Modest, one of the things that I said is that Modest is the type of player that has that mindset that you trust is going to maximize on whatever potential that he has there. Doesn't mean he's going to hit all the potential because, again, potential isn't always realized, but it does mean that you have somebody there that is going to maximize that potential because they're a dog and they work and they're willing to put in whatever it takes to make them better players. That is who Modest Buzelis is. That is who he's continued to show himself to be, as a guy that's going to work. And while a lot of Bulls fans have already wanted to crown him, hell, my co-host over on Locked on Bulls, Pat the designer, already wants to crown him the face of the Bulls. And I do think he is the face of, like, when you look at social media and stuff like that, the Bulls have pivoted towards him because he has the personality for it. But I'm not worried about social media. I'm not worried about optics. I'm worried about what's happening on the basketball court. And Modest has a lot of work that he needs to do on his game to become that player on the basketball court. Now, is he going to do that? We won't know until the basketball games start. As much as, he may play in tonight's Summer League game, we shall see. As much as Summer League is cool to watch and things, that's not even the greatest example of what to look at when somebody's on an NBA court. But Modest, no doubt, has taken this thing seriously. And he's no doubt continued to put in work since he got drafted by the Bulls. And you could tell that he has a level of pride, not only in of himself, but also in playing for the Bulls, that he wants to make this team great. And that's a mentality that you need. You need players with that type of mentality on your team. You need that level of fight on your team. Everything that we've heard, learned, seen from Modest Buzelis since the Bulls have drafted him have told me that he's a guy that I love wearing our jersey, that he's a guy that I love seeing represent the Chicago Bulls, that he's a guy that I trust really cares about what this team can be. And I can't say that about everybody. You always know, not to say that players don't care at all about the game or players don't care about who and what they can turn into. I'm not saying that, but it's a different level of execution. Modest wants to, whoever's in front of him, whether it's on the basketball court, no matter if it's a practice court, no matter if it's a summer league court, no matter if it's an NBA court, he wants to give them that work, right? He wants to be better than them, or he wants to stop them. He wants to score on them, whatever it is. And we're going to need a guy like that. That's the type of guy that can help raise your ceiling for this team. That's the type of guy that when you draft at 11th overall that you hope is going to step up and develop for you. That's what you hope is going to happen here. And so for the Bulls to be in that spot right now, to be in a spot where they have a young guy who's putting in so much of the work and people are noticing, right? And not to say that ultimately ends up being the end all be all, but when you see players around the NBA start mentioning Modest Buzelis or talk about what they notice from Modest, that shows that work that he's putting in is doing something. Something's being done with that. And that's not always what we've been able to see. Players talk positively about Patrick Williams his first couple of years in the league too. But he didn't have that mentality, right? I know every time Modest comes up, it's almost natural to go to P. Will because he was the last Bulls' highest draft pick that just really has not turned into much. And Modest kind of restores that faith in a lot of ways for Bulls fans, but he has a lot that he needs to work on in this game. He has a lot of development he still needs to do to really get to that place of being where Bulls fans see him as. But I think the front office notices that too. The front office notices that they got them one. Now, their hope is that you got you another one with no Essengay. And then you hope that you can continue adding those guys, right? I've said this. I know that, Bulls fans want a segment, want the Bulls to tank to get the highest pick possible. I just want the Bulls to get the best player where they drafted at. You can't control who's in front of you. You can't control who's behind you. But I want them to get players that actually are NBA players, that we look back and we say, hey, we missed us one that wasn't even ended up being an NBA player. You need to be getting guys that are going to be playing into your rotation, that are going to be actually playing and giving minutes for your team. Every draft pick you make over the next few years needs to be guys that are adding something to your team. And if they aren't adding something, whether it's in the long run or the immediate, then you got to question what you're doing here. And so hopefully AK and Eversley have started to right that part of the ship. If they have, then the future is going to be brighter with Chicago. If not, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But let me know what you guys think on that part down below. One last topic that we got to get into before we get out of here. You guys know we like to cover everything that happens with the Chicago Bulls. And there was an interesting article from Paulo Moreno over at Clutch Points in which he talked about the Milwaukee Bucks trading for Patrick Williams. Now, I want to put this more, we like to separate it. You have your reports and you have your rumors. This is more of a rumor than a report. So I want to be clear, this is not a Bucks insider reporting that the Bucks have some interest in Patrick Williams, but it is somebody who does cover the Bucks writing something in. This could be logical as far as a flip for both these teams, depending on how the teams view it. So it would be sending Patrick Williams to the Milwaukee Bucks for Kyle Kuzma. And initially reading this trade, my first impression was, hell no, hell fucking no, hell to the no. Right? Because Kyle Kuzma is a player that he has some things that work. Make no mistake about it. But I think when you look at Kyle Kuzma, of course, you look at a player that just is disappointed. He was on the Lakers team. Can't remember if he was on the Lakers team that won a title or not. Charge that to my mind, not my heart. But he was on the Lakers team. He then went to the Washington Wizards, which the time in being the Wizards, I don't hold it against anybody. Like, that Wizards team was so up and down when it came down to it in direction and coaching and things like that. So you look at that. But Kyle Kuzma for Patrick Williams on paper, what would you be getting in flipping these two? Well, you would be getting a guy that has done more as far as scoring on the NBA level. The Chicago Bulls were 7th in scoring last year, and you add a player in Kyle Kuzma who, and nothing else, is a versatile scorer. He can create his own shots where Patrick Williams can't. And to Kuzma's credit, he does take advantage when smaller players get switched on him, and he can drop 30. And you know that Kyle Kuzma can put up some points if given the opportunity, and it is what it is, right? Now, Kyle Kuzma also behind Matas Buzelis can come in, come off the bench. If he wouldn't have to be willing to accept it. It is what it is if we trade for him. But Kyle Kuzma does fit that mold of a player that could provide some instant offense, right? But then there's the thing that it comes down to. Kyle Kuzma at 29 years old, still is in what is technically his prime, but how much help did he bring to a Milwaukee Bucks team that was trying to go on a run in the playoffs? That's where I look at it and I'm like, there's some problems there, right? But it is what it is. And it looks like Kyle Kuzma was on that title team in 2000. That's crazy. It's been that long since then. And Kyle Kuzma has had moments where he has positively impacted basketball teams. I want to be clear that he has had that. And maybe some of that needs to wear off from Washington. But regardless of the players here, right? Because I think it's going to be polarizing for any Bulls fan to hear Kyle Kuzma. It is what it is, right? But what does it offer the Bulls? Well, Kyle Kuzma only has 2 years left on his contract, and it really isn't that much more money than Patrick Williams. He's making $22 million this upcoming season, but then he has a declining scale deal where it's only $20 million in the last year of that contract, and then he's an unrestricted free agent. So the question is that it's getting off of Patrick Williams' money long term, right? Which Patrick Williams still has 4 years left on his contract at $19 million per. Is getting off that contract early worth taking on Kyle Kuzma for what would be 2 years at that point? Could you take 2 years, good or bad, of Kyle Kuzma to then get off the long-term money that is Patrick Williams that, then, again, we don't really trust who Patrick Williams is as a player. The $18 million of Patrick Williams' flat contract there. And keep in mind, P-Will has a player option in the last year of that deal, which he's very likely to pick up. If it was a team option, maybe you look at it differently that way. So, for example, for Kyle Kuzma, just to kind of put this in simple terms, you'd be paying $42 million, $42.7 million for 2 years of Kyle Kuzma, whereas 4 years of Patrick Williams, you're paying more than that. So that's what you'd be looking at if is the long-term savings. And I know people are going to say, but what about the summer of 26? I thought we were going to be players in the summer of 26. This doesn't really affect that too much. So you'd be paying. The question that you have to ask yourself is that You got $72 million of Patrick Williams over 4 years. Would you be willing to take on $42 million of Kyle Kuzma over 2 years? Save yourself $30 million in the long run, even if Kyle Kuzma does not work out. And that's the way that I like to work at it. Kyle Kuzma isn't some great asset that you're adding and you feel like, oh, man, we're even more of a playoff team. But is the money, and that's more of a front office thing. I know Bulls fans really don't care about that. It's not their money, but that's more of a front office thing. And I can see the Bulls looking at that and saying, well, we saved $30 million over the deal, and we get a player back in Kyle Kuzma, who at least we know is going to be a more consistent scorer than anything that we've seen P. Will doing. Is he the defender P. Will is? Hell no. But P. Will's been sliding defensively. Maybe that was the foot. Maybe they decided to come in and bring it back to that, right? And you look at it, Kyle Kuzma last year for the season averaged 14.8 points per game. That was the least amount of points that he's averaged since 2020-21, where he was a contributor to that Lakers title team. But it's not like he was a featured player on that title team, right? So you're getting a player that if you need to rely on and do more offense, you could get that. And so in the savings aspect of it, I'd be more willing to do it. Now, can you get something else out that deal? Can you get a future second? Can you get something like that? Because if you can, then it makes it even more enticing. I'm not saying that this is some great winter trade for the Chicago Bulls, but it is something that could be interesting if you want to look into it. But you guys can let me know how you feel on that down below. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like we like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.